Hello, BookTube. Friday. This is one of those rare weeks where I didn't think it could come fast enough. And it's here. And that means Friday Reads. I'm watching a bunch of Friday Reads videos all day, and I want to make one of my own. I want to show you some of the things I'll be reading this weekend. There's one chunker, and a couple of things. I don't think we've seen any of these books on this channel. So the first one is a reread, but recently I read the advanced copy and really liked it, and I'm going to read the finished copy and see what I missed. Maybe increase my liking or decrease it. It's the risk I run. It's by Kate Christensen, and it's The Last Cruise. Very nice U.S. edition cover. It's set in the modern day. The 1950s vintage ocean liner Queen Isabella is making her final voyage before heading to the scrapyard. For the guests on board, among them Christine Thorne, former journalist turned Maine farmer, it's a chance to experience the bygone mid-20th century era of decadent luxury cruising, complete with fine dining, classic highballs, string quartets, and sophisticated jazz. But this is the second decade of an uncertain new millennium, not the sunny, heedless 1950s. And certain disquieting signs of strife and malfunction above and below decks intrude on the festivities. Down in the main galley, Martin Zasbo, a battle-weary Hungarian executive sous chef, watches escalating tensions among the crew. Meanwhile, Miriam Kozlow, an elderly Israeli violinist with the Sabra String Quartet, becomes increasingly aware of the age-related vulnerabilities of the ship itself, and the corners cut by the cynical cruise ship company Cabaret. And these three characters are the linchpin when everything goes wrong. Because, of course, if you've got a cruise, everything's going to go wrong. And I loved it. I thought it was an unpretentious story told in a really smart way, in a really involving, intelligent way. I don't, myself, ask for anything more than that from novels, so I'm going to give it another try, though. Now that I have the finished copy, I'm going to read it again. And then this next one doesn't come out for a while, for November, but I'm not going to be able to wait. This is written by Ross McPhee with illustrations by Peter Shooten, and it is End of the Megafauna. The fate of the world's fiercest and strangest animals. And as you can see on the cover, it's nature red in tooth and claw. This is a fully illustrated book of the prehistoric animals that get second shrift because of the dinosaurs. And they shouldn't, because they're completely fascinating. And I can't wait to... That's a little bit of a printing error. I assure you, Pleistocene cheetahs did not hunt upside down. But this is an advanced copy, and I'm not going to be able to wait. I'm definitely going to just plow through it. Can't wait. I wish there were a great big book on the megafauna that all died, and maybe this is it. Maybe this is the great big book I've been looking for. And the next one is something I didn't see coming at all. I just recently got it, and I again, can't wait. I think, though, that I don't need to. I think this is a July release, so I'm technically in the clear. When is this? Yeah, this is a July release. But it's not anything that I expected. This is the annotated Big Sleep. It's Raymond Chandler's novel, The Big Sleep, only in a big annotated version. I believe this is what it's going to look like. I think it's a paperback original. It's got 3 editors, Owen Hill, Pamela Jackson, and Anthony Dean Risotto. And it's got an introduction by Jonathan Latham. And I think it's such a weird idea to annotate The Big Sleep that, again, I can't wait. But I don't think I need to. It's got lots of illustrations, and I'm sure it will have lots of snark. It sounds like a fun book to annotate, and I'm a sucker for annotated editions when they're fun, when they remember that it's fun. Because, of course, you can pick up The Big Sleep and read it without any annotations at all and enjoy the heck out of it. So an annotated volume had better be done with a tongue at least partially in cheek. So we shall see. I can't wait. Then a couple of rereads, a couple more rereads. The first one is Maddie Clam's Who is Rich? For some reason, the cover has a child's illustration of Batman hugging a lobster. But it is. Let's see here. At a week-long, I don't think we ever saw this on this channel. At a week-long summer arts conference in a charming New England beachside town, a once sort of famous cartoonist named Rich Fisher is trying not to think about his wife and kids at home, his unfinished book, his uncertain future, his debts and back taxes, or his desire for love and sensual human contact. But, of course, one of this year's attendees is 41-year-old painting student Amy O'Donnell, Unhappily married to a brutish Wall Street titan, she's a tall, beautiful zillionaire who is everything Rich despises. Rich and Amy met here a year ago, shared a moment of passion, then spent the winter months sending hot texts back and forth, and now they're back for another summer of artistic self-expression and more. And before the week ends and they have to return to the real world, Rich must decide, will Amy rescue or destroy him? And I read this in advance copy, and then I read the finished copy, and I disliked it both times. I had a whole bunch of complaints. Number one, this is Philip Roth, John Updike territory in the main. This is right in the middle of that territory, where we're just supposed to give the confused, constantly priapic, middle-aged guy a pass on virtually everything he does. He can be boorish, he can be childishly self-centered, he can be gluttonous, he can be unfaithful, he can be a liar, he can be untrue, he can be cowardly. It doesn't matter. We're supposed to cut him a break. Under the author's apparent assumption that the readers of this book will be entirely male, that they'll be entirely middle-aged, and that the reason they will cut the author slack is because they're expecting to have slack cut for them when they act that way. I didn't like it when Updike and Roth and Mailer used to pull that kind of crap, and I didn't like it here either. I have no idea how old Maddie Clam is now. But and another thing that bothered me, especially when in my second read-through of the finished copy, was that when I put down the book, I got the strong impression that the author has absolutely no idea what it means to feel love for another human being. Either the love of a father for a child, for the love of a husband for a wife, or even erotic love for a stranger at a conference. All of it read like a report from a space alien. But, and you might ask, if I thought that way about the advanced copy and the finished copy, why am I reading it again? Well, part of the reason is peer pressure, in a way, in a gentle, I think, benign nudge of peer pressure, because the paperback is covered in blurbs from experienced book critics. And that when that happens and I get a paperback like that, I always worry that maybe I missed something big, and enough time has passed so that I'll certainly give it another try. It's not a big book. It won't take me long to do. It's worth it to see if something that elicited a chorus of universal praise. Well, it's not quite universal. I don't actually see a blurb from the Wall Street Journal. I could be missing it. But one way or another, I'll give it a try. And the next one is it's a reread as well. I indulged myself to read it early, but I'm going to read it again. This is B. Catlin's The Vor trilogy. This is The Cloven. This is the final volume of the Vor trilogy. Let me read you. In the embattled city of Essenwald, the young Afrikaner socialite Serena Lore is mourning the death of her lover, the Cyclops Ishmael. That gives you any idea what the first two books were like. When she rekindles a relationship with a famed naturalist Eugene Marais. Before departing down his own dark path, Marais presents her with a gift, an object of great power that grants her a vision of a new world. Meanwhile, the threat of Germany's Blitz looms over London, and only Nicholas the Erstwhile senses the danger to come. Will he be able to save the man who saved him? As the Nazi forces descend on Africa, will the Vor finally succeed in enacting its revenge against those who have invaded and defiled it? The Cloven is a novel of battles and betrayals in which Catling's incredible creations all fulfill their destinies and lead us to an epic conflagration and the fate of mankind hanging in the balance. I absolutely loved the Vor, and I absolutely loved the Erstwhile, and I couldn't wait, so I got an early version of this, but I blew through it just mainly to find out what happens at the end. The ending is incredible. The ending is amazingly orchestrated, perfectly done. The book won't make any sense to you at all, despite that description. That description did its work. It did as much as it could. But the book won't make much sense to you at all if you haven't read the first two. But in this case, I'm not holding it against this third book because this is weird, epic, gothic, strange, magical realism / science fiction / fantasy of the very first order. So, yes, this book won't probably make any sense to you if you haven't read the first two, but in that case, that's just my reason to say read the first two. And this also has blurbs all over. I'm pretty sure I reviewed The Vor and lovingly. I didn't review The Erstwhile, I don't think, but I can't wait. I can't wait to read it again. Then the next one is also a reread. It's huge. And I've already read it. It comes out at the end of July. I'm going to read it again because it's just complex enough to need it. It's an English language translation of a book by Jürgen Osterhammel called Unfabling the East. And it's a gigantic work. I love this author's work. Even in English, he's fantastic. And it's all about the European Enlightenment and its encounters with the Far East. The standard narrative for those encounters has been that it was an unalleviated tapestry of colonialism and exploitation and ruin and wreck. And Osterhammel sees more in it than that. He sees it as a much more nuanced and multifaceted thing than that, with a lot of positives. And I loved it. Absolutely loved it. I loved it so much when I read it the first time that I was sort of planning on getting the German version. But if I read an English language translation of a big, ambitious work like this, and I don't get the impression at any point that the translator is, so to speak, in the room, then I can sometimes let it go. I can sometimes content myself with just reading the translation. And I didn't get that impression at all in this book. It's a clean, beautiful translation, I think. I don't think it could be otherwise. Usually if a translation is bad, if it's not faithful to the original, you can tell, even if you haven't read the original. But I don't know. I don't think I'm going to bother this time around. I think I'm just going to read the English language version again. And then the next book is also a reread. It's not a reread of a new release. It's not a new paperback release or anything like that. It's an old book. I just recently clawed my way out from under a giant wodge of writing to do. I had 2 major deadlines and a whole bunch of paperwork type stuff. And it was all just crowding in on me. And also, the news of the week was really, really rotten. Just every day was worse than the day before. And so I just decided that this weekend, in addition to all of these rereads, which are kind of relaxing for me, I will also take a break and read some fun, favorite other stuff, older stuff. And the thing I have in mind this time around is David Carroll's Swampwalker's Journal, in which it's natural history at its absolute best. He's a beautiful observer, and he's also a wonderful illustrator. He illustrates his own work. Let me show you. There's hooded mergansers. Their reflection in the water. What else can we find here? There are illustrations all throughout. There are spot illustrations and also full page illustration. There's a frog, and it's just a natural history account of him examining the wetlands. Just beautifully done. The type of natural history writer where you don't really need him to have an epic subject. You just need to let him loose anywhere, and you'll be happy to read what follows. And he's written a handful of books. I strongly recommend them all. If you love natural history, especially illustrated natural history, you cannot go wrong with this author. But Swampwalker's Journal might be my favorite one. So I'm just going to reread it for the fun of it. And then, believe it or not, I have an original read. It's not just the megafauna. I have an original read. I might do more. This probably won't be all that I read this weekend. But the original read is, I am well disposed to it. It's the 2nd volume in a trilogy. And I liked the first volume very much. And it's by a self-published author, which is, adds an extra smile to my face to know that work this good is happening out there in the world of self-publishing. The first book in this trilogy could easily have been published by Viking or Simon & Schuster. It could easily have been. I don't know what the story is. I don't know if the author got, rejection letters from them because somebody was asleep at the wheel, or the author maybe very rightfully didn't want to go through the rigmarole of trying to get a book into the win the national lottery sweepstakes that is mainstream publishing in America today. One way or another. The book is by Janet Wertman, and this is The Path to Somerset. This is book 2 she's doing a trilogy about the Seymour family. This is Tudor historical fiction. The first book was Jane the Queen, and about Jane Seymour. And this is about Edward Seymour, her brother, and the labyrinthine path that he had to walk at the very highest levels of Henry VIII's Tudor court in order to stay alive and in power, and in order to ward off his court enemies. Edward Seymour's story is fantastic, and it's a great subject for a novel. So it's also those of you academics out there who might be watching, it's also a great subject for a nice 500-page biography. Ample documentation, crucial role at a crucial time in British history. Might be nice if there were a 500-page biography. But one way or another, this author does her research. She's a really lively writer. So actually, I haven't read this. I'm going to give it a try this weekend. I don't think it comes out until August, but I can't wait. But I can use this as an opportunity to recommend Jane the Queen by Janet Wortman. This is, because it's self-published paperback release historical fiction, it might not have come across your radar, even if you like that sort of thing. And if it hasn't, it should. So you might want to invest whatever Jane the Queen costs online. But one way or another, that's going to be a read that I do this weekend that I haven't read. And that's it to start. That is the spine, sort of the spine and the skeleton of my Friday reads. These aren't very big books, and rereads are faster than reads, so I will probably be reading more than this weekend, but you never know. We shall see. There'll also be a number of deadline work things that I'm not going to bother holding up here. But one way or another, because it's Friday Reads, I of course want to know what you're reading. So feel free to let me know. And I'll try and annotate all this in the comments. I always forget to do that on Friday Reads, but I'll try and remember this time around. And in the meantime, I will wrap it up for now, but I'll see you soon. Thank you, BookTube.